Okay, so I'm working standing up today. um, Making a few adjustments here. What I did was I took the this animation, rendered the keyframes out of Blender, and then just for simplicity's sake, I am doing some inking in Krita. I really mainly want to see how this inking process is going to go before I commit to doing the whole scene in Krita, because frankly I really need to go back to this shot. And what's got to happen here is probably what I should do is let's go ahead and move the camera. So I'm going to hit the tab key to go into object mode, and then I'm hitting the tilde key so that all my layers excuse me, are exposed. That way I can get at the camera. And I'm going to hit the G key, and I would say move the camera to something like that. Okay, close up my layers, back to my edit strokes mode. Okay, so what's got to happen is once he gets here, and let me grab this view. Sorry. Okay. So if we go here to the temp layer and finish. Okay, stop. Always make sure you're on the right layer before you go too far. Okay, you hit the D key. Actually, I'm going to hit Control D and do a polyline. Okay, so the window is probably about that wide. We're not going to really have perspective this way. I'd say we're going to leave that kind of straight up and down. So just a slight bit of perspective, but okay, so that takes care of the guides. All right. So as always, save early, save often. So now if we hit the A key, this guy's gotten up there. Now I was saying yesterday that it's as likely as not that this shot won't even make it into the anime, just because okay, yeah, sorry about that, guys. I just opened, I clicked the wrong icon on my app launcher and launched Anime Studio Pro instead of OpenTunes. So I'm just taking a couple steps here to provide the backstory for those who may not be totally acclimated about where we're at and what we're doing here. Okay, so for those of you who are aware, and by the way, you just heard the beep, that's the audio output capture. I'm turning that off so that if the computer beeps at me, you're not going to hear it. Okay, so now having done that, let's go to Akari sleeping. Sorry about that. Okay. So now in OpenTunes, let's get to the correct place. Alright, so yeah, it's looping on the first shot. So I'm going to just scan through here. Goes to the wide shot. Now in the final version of this, we actually reverse these two shots. And by the way, just so you know, this is not really what it looks like, because we do have the schematic view, which I will open right now. And I'm actually going to switch it to my other screen, because I often have the schematic view open, and it doesn't really make sense to have it in my face. So this is the schematic view, and you can see on the, actually if I switch it to this and then go into the sub X sheet, okay, so I just went into the sub X sheet for that first shot, and you can see that there's some effects in line. So now I'm hitting the hotkey I set up, which is Control up arrow. I'm going to go back to my main interface here, and you can see that if I actually turn on the preview, that there's quite a bit more to the scene. And that's all just to say, I know some of it looks stupid when you just look at it in this, the rapid view mode, but it looks a little better when it's in preview mode. I wish they didn't call it preview mode, because to me this is preview mode. The other is render mode. So what I did yesterday was I reanimated some stuff with these two Ninja guys. Okay, and this is another example of what I'm talking about. If you turn on the post-production effects and stuff, all these shadows make sense. So what looks like a bunch of scribbling is actually shading on the character that is clipped. The alpha channel for that level that has the scribbled shadows is using the character itself as a clipping mask, and that's something that's done through the schematic view that I covered in another video. So anyway, so we've got these guys. What's the point here? The point is that we have a spatial configuration here where clearly relative to this window, Ninja number 1, the bald one, is on this side. So therefore, when he comes in the window, he's, like I said, flushed over to that side. So now what I want to do is reference in the OpenTunes project, I want to go back to, actually, you know what? What I want to go back to is the very shot that was corrupted by OpenTunes. It's this one. Well, no, actually, this is not the one that was corrupted, I don't believe. There's one shot that in the scene that was OpenTunes just did some stuff I won't get into, but there is a shot right here. This shot right here, where Ninja number 1 turns and looks around. That shot in OpenTunes is screwed up. Fortunately, I had it already rendered, and I can already see a couple things that are going to have to be tweaked in the at the inking stage. I don't necessarily have to do it at the sketch or pencil test stage. Okay, so in Blender, one thing that's clearly missing through most of this is the wraps on his hands. And also, as you noticed, we had a wrap on his shoulder, or not his shoulder, but basically around his bicep. So we got to remember to put that back in there. So, point of all this being that once we get to this point, this guy's going to have to actually kick his leg up to get onto the windowsill and use his body weight to thrust himself in. So how are we going to do that? Okay, I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. When I started, I showed Krita. Well, I brought the pencil lines such as they are so far and brought them into Krita. Now, based on what I just did, clearly it's going to have to be re-rendered if, in fact, I render the pencil test out of Blender with this camera framing. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that. I'm leaning against it because the next scene that's coming up has a lot of fighting. Okay. It's got a lot of fighting, and there's going to be some stuff that I'm going to want to draw larger than a frame so that I can have a camera pan move, sort of probably at the OpenTunes stage. So there are decisions that are being deferred at this point, but every step that I'm taking is a step that I'm not going to have to go back and redo it, I don't think. I think I'm on pretty solid footing in that respect. So, looking at this, I think the shot that I really wanted was probably this one. Yeah, I wanted to just look at his face and look at the band around his forehead and just kind of see how I had done the costuming. Because, you get moving fast, it's easy to forget. So, and by the way, you could certainly criticize this right here. How the heck is that actually wrapped around his head? Because there you go. When he turns this way, all of a sudden it's under his ear. Now, is that something that anyone's ever going to care about? I don't think so. And plus, to be, it's kind of fun to find the mistakes, right? So, Uh, so sometimes you leave the mistakes in there, but I don't think I'm going to probably have to go to jail for that one necessarily. So anyway, back here, the most important thing right now, and I'm not going to use my stylus for this, I'm going to use my mouse. You probably knew what a mouse looked like. Okay. What I want to do is figure out what the next major keyframe is going to be. And in order to figure that out, he's going to have to, okay, so what I want to do is hit the comma, and I want to really crank up the range for the proportional editing tool, because my objective here is to see how much latitude I have to use the proportional editing tool to shift his weight. And so I think I see what I need to do is probably I'm going to hit control. I'm going to grab the stuff that I don't want to be rubbery, if you will. Okay. And then I'm going to hit the period key so that I can actually have, I can put the cursor here, which you can't see it because I've got only render indicated here, and the reason for that is because I don't want to reconfigure everything to match Blender's grid. I just drew my own little grid lines as a guide, and so that's what I'm going with. So anyway, my point is I'm putting the cursor here so that when I do a rotate or a move, the rotate will be centered on the cursor. I actually don't think that's where I want it to be. Okay. So this is one of those things that it might be faster just to redraw it and not try to make the proportional editing tool do the work for me, but it is still kind of interesting to try. Okay, so this is not bad actually. This isn't bad. So what I want to do is go rotate this probably about there. By the way, I just changed my hotkeys today. So I changed my hotkeys to match Krita and OpenTunes. Previously, I went Shift middle mouse to pan the view in Blender. I'm like, anyway, the upshot of the story is that it was causing me in Krita to accidentally be rotating the canvas all the time when I didn't mean to. So the best solution for me was to change it in Blender. So this is what I was after. I want his whole body to lean, but I want his head to sort of keep balance. So now, having done that, you know, clearly this is pretty whacked, but it got him roughly to the position he needs to be in. Actually, that's perfect. Okay, so now I just have to redraw this. So let's hit the D key, and let's make our eraser big so we can just get rid of all this crap. Okay. So now, do we have onion skins on? I think they should be. Alright, and there's going to be other keyframes in between, obviously. Okay, so now actually what I could do to make life a little quicker and easier is, since this is just a sketch, why not take this and let's hit Control C, go to the next keyframe and hit Control V, because really that was what I wanted to do. Alright, so that's cool. Again, one of the reasons I like Blender for doing pencil tests is it's just fast to get things kind of blocked in close to what you want them to be. Okay, so presumably his arm is going to actually be moved back a little bit, and then the forearm will be a little foreshortened, but that's pretty much the pose I'm after. Now this hand I'm going to go ahead and redraw because it's going to have to come up a little bit anyway. Okay. And all I need to do is indicate the positions. I don't have to draw this in detail. Okay, so now his shoulder would probably elongate a little bit. And frankly, I'm thinking that this is really what needs to happen. So his shoulder actually might be pushed up because of the weight of his arm pushing into his body. Like so. Yep, something like that. Okay, so why did I do that? Well, if I go there, I just did it. I did Shift middle mouse again. Okay, so now knee, foot. Okay, cool. I think that's what I wanted. Okay, so not quite. It's not quite right. I think that this would be more convincing if we do 2 keyframes. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give him a little bit more lean. And so the way I'm going to try to accomplish that here, if I'm lucky, is to grab the head. Okay, that didn't work. Grab the head because we don't want the head to deform at all. But center it here on his belly button so that his arms will stretch. Okay, so now when I rotate, if I go a little bigger, yeah, see how cool that is? Okay, so now I can go rotate here. Yep, I'm just double checking to make sure it's doing what I want. Okay, now on that keyframe, we can go ahead and get his foot up here. I'm going to say like that. Actually, let's do it like this. We're going to do this in 3 frames. Okay, and I'm going to just hit the G key and wiggle it so that it inserts a new keyframe. I could have hit whatever the key combination is that I always forget, which for a grease pencil keyframe, I talked about this yesterday, I think it was. I can never remember what the hotkey is to insert a grease pencil keyframe. Okay, so now he's right up at the edge. Does that kind of sort of look right? Okay. There's no way what I just drew could happen unless we made another adjustment here. So we'll make another adjustment here. Alright, so D key. That was clearly too much. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is in 3D, I may wind up actually removing some keys. This is going to be a little strange, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the S key and scale this up a little bit and move it down a little bit. Actually, I'm going to make it more extreme. Okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. Okay, why did I do that craziness? Well, like I said yesterday, you want to work from the known to discover the unknown. One thing that is known here is that he's got to get his body weight in this room. Okay, so I always want to reserve the right to fail and say this didn't work, but I think it's going to work. Okay, so you can see what he's doing. He's got to get his weight to fall on that floor, and actually that's really kind of sort of what would happen. Something like that. Okay, so this I'm not happy with because I feel like this is a little too big here. And plus I'm thinking that he wouldn't quite be in at that point. So that way when he, yes, I like that. Okay, so now I tell you, this is really a challenging thing to animate. So I really got to think about you know, with no reference at all, I have to think about how this guy would actually move. It looks like, yes, okay. For a moment there, I'm half dyslexic, okay? So I was actually thinking that this strap around his shoulder was in the wrong place. Okay, so now one could argue that maybe I made this all a little bit too big. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the S key but shift. So we can just make a slight adjustment. Because I want it to be bigger because he's moving into the camera, but not too much. Okay, that's not too bad. Now the question is, what would happen next? Gosh, if I was... He has to roll over, right? So bear with me, folks. Ah, shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Go back to the previous keyframe. I want to make sure that those circles, these delineations of the wrap, are very round in order to emphasize the foreshortening that's taking place, as opposed to here where it would be fairly straight, right? Obviously this one wouldn't, but you see what I mean. Okay. So I guess one thing we want to do here is I know I'm having a hard time finishing sentences. Let's just play with this for a minute. I'm thinking that what would happen is his head would rotate around this way and come forward. So it would be slightly bigger. Okay. And now it's time to redraw. Okay. This hand would flatten out. And it would come back this way, I think. Okay, that's too far. This isn't going to change much. Okay. I'm thinking foot's going to come slightly forward, flatten out. I'm not trying to draw it accurately at this point. Knee's going to come into the room. We're going to start to get some foreshortening here. You'd see the shape of his calf. So like I said, I reserve the right to fail here. I'm not 100% sure this is going to work. If his butt's there, I'm thinking this has to be forward even more. Yeah, more like that. Yeah. Okay, that feels better. Just a really tricky move to... I think that's close enough that if I go ahead and go to the next key, I'm going to be able to get it pretty close. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw this key because his head's going to start turning anyway, so what's the point of trying to preserve? Okay, so I'm going to say he's going to slide. And we might want to have other keyframes in here in between these two. Okay, I don't want to start losing my sense of volume and making his body too big. Okay. And this hand would definitely be an anchor right there. This is, I'm going ahead and doing this the way I'm doing it because that arm would slide around really fast. This whole move would take place very quickly. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the next key. And I got to see this in my head, so let me just dot that out. Shoulder would be, his deltoid would be scrunched up that way. And that's kind of his backbone. Yeah, I actually think that's pretty close. Okay, so now let's say shoulder, right shoulder is here. Head comes around like this. Okay. Arms swinging. This arm would go ahead and come back under. Okay. Right leg. Let's pull out a little bit and see what I got going here in terms of scale. Not bad, not bad, not bad. And I'm going to go ahead and turn him around and say, I think something like this is what would actually happen. And then I think there should be the possibility that maybe all of a sudden a weapon appears right here. I'm going to have to talk to Valerie about that one. I'm not sure what the status of their weapons would be. Ponytail. I'm thinking knee would slide that way. Foreshortened. Again, don't know quite if this is going to work. Well, I've said many times that my, whoops, boo-boo, that my sort of natural go-to drawing style is definitely more from a comic book type of, oops, didn't want B, I want D. That's another thing I should probably change in Blender. Every other app I use uses the D key for a hotkey for drawing. Blender's the only one that uses or I'm sorry, the B key. Blender's the only one that uses the D. So, not complaining, mind you. Alright, so there's knee number 2. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go ahead and play this back. Yeah, so my point earlier was I was going to go ahead and do some ink in Krita just to kind of see how it goes. I keep giving Krita chances not to be stupid. And I found several things right away today that were really stupid. One thing being, and I won't spend much time with this, but they used to have a feature on all these toolbars that allowed you to lock them, okay? So that you didn't accidentally go to grab a tool and then do that. Look what just happened. Where'd my timeline go? I mean, not only did it fly away, but who knew where it flew to? Okay, so I'm lucky because I was able to put it back. But I've had other situations where it's like trying to get everything back to where it was supposed to be if you didn't have a saved layout is a major pain. So the rationale on the Krita website, there's a little icon here that's about 1 millimeter long, okay? If that. They removed the lock the Docker. The icon was removed ostensibly because the icon was confusing to people. Okay, so you want to talk about taking the baby and throwing it out with the bathwater? Because they can't see anywhere in this entire toolbar that has 2 icons down here and a line and a name here. Nowhere along here can they find a place to put an icon that looks like a freaking padlock like that. And not only that, to just add to the programming maybe a tooltip so that when you mouse over it you know that it's to lock the Docker. No, not the Krita developers. What they did in their manifest genius is they removed the capability to lock the panel entirely, apparently, in order to save us all of us stupid people, from being confused by the little icon that represented locking the panel. You just you wag your head in disbelief that really that's how we're going to think. It's so stupid. I mean, we're talking about software that's so complicated that you have to spend a little time with it, right? To be able to ever get anything done. So it's not like you don't have to educate yourself. But boy, we don't want people to be confused by a little icon that keeps us from accidentally doing that 50 times a day. Okay, end of rant. Cracks me up. All right, let's hit the Alt-A key and see what happens. Climbs in. Okay, now the problem is that our animation isn't long enough. Okay, let's go up to 60. Go up to 60. Not 6. 60. Boom. Okay, so save early, save often. That's a pretty good move. It was actually, the pacing of it wasn't too bad. Look at that. That's pretty cool, actually. Sometimes I surprise myself. I did not. Oh, I did not expect that to go that well. That's funny. The only thing I can criticize is there probably needs to be one more keyframe in between here, right there, or maybe here. But I don't know. This thing's going to be on 2s now. I guess probably this move should be on 1s. Everything else is on 2s in this shot. I think I'm going to stop here. I think it's time for a break. But that's feeling pretty good to me. And I'm probably going to come back here in just a little while and do some more, and maybe I'll live stream today. This obviously is not a live stream, but yeah. This part, I'm thinking maybe this shot will begin here. Let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. Let's go to frame. Oh, we'll just pick 16. Okay, so as you can see, and let me go back to this. Okay, so the way the shot up, what we have is about 1 minute of animation here, and this is where it ends. Okay, is I should probably play this. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn on the audio output so that you can hear the initial soundtrack. Okay. So let's see here. Yeah, okay, so now you can hear the soundtrack. Okay, so should I play the whole thing? Maybe for... Okay, it's going to be a little skippy because Vegas hasn't saved the frames into memory. But... And so we got this slow pan into this Tibetan monastery. Birds flying by the background. There's Akari snoozing. Okay. But all is not well. From outside the wall of the monastery, we see that we got these ninja dudes that are climbing. The second guy's having a little trouble. And something goes wrong. That can't be good. Okay, so now one thing that's going to change, I had put, and I didn't spend much time with it, I just to kind of see if it was going to feel right, I put these guys sort of poking in silhouette. I think that's going to be removed, and Akari's eyes, the move on her eyes has got to be slowed down so that she sort of goes like that as opposed to boop, boop, you know. Okay, I'm thinking a slower move would be good there. And I'm also thinking I want to actually completely reanimate her eyes so that we get that nice anime eyeball look, you know, and get real specific about how we want those eyes to look. So that's something that's going to have to be changed, but not a big deal. It'll probably take about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes. All right, so now that she knows what's going on, and then we go to this. So I think that what we could do is actually, it'd be tricky. I'm just thinking maybe it'd be possible to make a slight adjustment to this window. Just move the positioning of the window so that we could actually do a camera move over Akari to come to this point of view. That would be a very anime way to do it. And if that were the case, then this would be Akari's position. You'd see just a little bit of her head right here. Okay, so if that was the case, he thinks he's doing great. Now, a couple details here to be aware of is that, and this is where it gets a little funnier, is right here in the room there's going to be like a table with a really, really expensive vase that no doubt has some kind of mystical properties or something. And when Ninja, and by the way, another thing I want to add is that in order to make this whole thing play, I may just go ahead and widen this window and make it quite a bit bigger. Now that does suggest that in some of these shots, sorry, wrong application, perhaps in some of these shots, especially early on here, I guess it really would only be this. Yeah, this one. I mean, that shot actually has some perspective weirdness that doesn't quite work. I'm not sure how. I think this is actually a glitch that needs to be fixed, but this perspective is not correct. The perspective should be coming straight out to the floor here. So this here looks like it's right, but this is not. So anyway, I'm thinking that this shot here, we might have to maybe just remove this wall in the foreground so that we can at least give the impression that this entryway is bigger than it is. The perspective flaws here are actually bugging me a lot, because to me this shot in particular, not so much this part. This part's okay, but the view that we have of Akari, I believe, is breaking the level of quality and professionalism we want to have in this anime. I think this is not good enough. Okay, I think it needs to be fixed. And maybe with the lights shining in the way they are, maybe we should make the whole room darker so we just see a hint of her, just enough to suggest that she's in there. So that's another problem for another day. It's only one shot that takes about a second, so it's pretty simple to fix and revise later. So no big deal, as long as we're aware of it. Just like taking the guys in silhouette, take these out of that shot, they don't need to be there. Okay, so with that, I think that this shot then is working pretty well. What I was kind of starting out this part of the video on was the idea that it would start here at frame, whatever it is, 14, is it? 16. Okay. Yeah, so, and this is just movie editing 101. Why are you going to show this? You know, what is the audience gained by showing him sort of working? Okay, so then the question would become, well, why did you bother to animate it? As I explained yesterday, this was really an exercise to see if I could pull it off, actually. And I didn't have any reference material, so I just wanted to see, you know, how would you get in there and sort of, you know, if you had to move over, how would your body move and the weight of your head shift around and all that sort of thing. So, but in actual fact, I think starting on frame 16 makes more sense. Now let's play with this a little more. Remember, the rule with movie editing is enter as late as possible, leave as early as possible in a scene. When you're editing a movie, that's what you do. And I know what I'm talking about because I've edited quite a few movies. And as long as I'm going to mention that, I'm also going to mention my latest movie. I mean, as long as I'm talking about it, I might as well talk about it. But I'll make it quick. Okay. So this movie, Healed by Grace 2, which is a sequel to Healed by Grace 1, 2012. This movie's going to be out everywhere in like December. So look for the trailer here on YouTube. And that movie features Sean Young, who's most known for movies like Ace Ventura, Blade Runner. She was the girl in Blade Runner, Rachel. So she's featured in that movie that I wrote and directed basically and released over the last 3 years. I've been kind of lazy about getting it out, but it is happening. So anyway, back to the current project that's in the soup, which is an anime. And like I said, editing, the rule with editing is enter late, leave early. You don't want to bore the audience with a bunch of, what do we want to say, extemporaneous? Is that a good word? I think so. Extemporaneous activity that doesn't contribute anything to the story. So now the question would become, with that idea in mind, is how late can we start? Let's keep starting even later. Nope, I don't like that. I want to at least see him trying to get in. So let's try 18. I'm thinking maybe 20. Nope, 22 or 23. I'm thinking after his hand is planted. There. Okay, so we're gonna ink and color and render the whole thing. All right. But I can almost guarantee when we get over into Vegas and we're actually editing, I can almost guarantee it's gonna get cut off right about there. That's probably where it's gonna feel good. Because the cool thing about that is we could do this camera move where it goes past Akari's head, and when you get the reveal of the bottom of the window, there he is. He's already there, which I think would be really good timing. So, and we're going to let that shot right there hold for a second, and then probably pan the camera over, and then we'll see Ninja number 2 coming in this way, but he's going to struggle. He's going to come in and lay flat on his belly and then accidentally hit this table, which is going to start the vase. You know, the vase is going to fall. So Ninja number 1, who's kind of the leader, has to jump back and catch it, and when he turns around, all of a sudden his eyes are going to pop open because he's going to realize that Akari is awake and that she has already snagged one of his weapons off of him and has it pointed at his spine, and she's going to paralyze him if he doesn't do what she says or something of that nature. So that's where the scene is going, in case you wondered. So anyway, I think that's it for now. I'm going to take a little break and may do some more later today, but I would call this session a success, and I'm looking forward to finishing it up.